Welcome to the Explainer. You know how some lessons just click while others are gone the second you walk out the door? Well, today we're going to tear down why that happens. We're building a blueprint for designing learning that actually sticks. This is all about creating experiences, not just delivering information. Let's dive in.
All right, let's put you in the hot seat. Imagine this. You've got a room full of managers, and your job is to teach them active listening. Not just talk about it, but actually teach the skill. So, what's your move? Where do you even start with something like that?
Okay, so here's a true story. Two different groups were given this exact problem. Group 1, they came up with a classic icebreaker, something like Chinese whispers. Fun, maybe, but kind of vague. Group 2, though, they designed this incredible, structured, two-part role play. And the difference between those two ideas? It's everything. It's the secret sauce to designing learning that actually works.
So here's our game plan. We'll look at what makes an activity really work. We'll talk about starting with your goal, the KSA Framework. Then we'll match the right method using Kolb's cycle, get into the nitty-gritty of crafting the experience, and finally, lock in the learning with Gibbs' reflective cycle. And at the end, you'll have a complete blueprint to take away.
So, let's break that down. What made the role play so much better than the game? Honestly, it wasn't the activity itself. Not really. The real magic, the big secret, was the thinking that happened before they even came up with the idea. It wasn't just a lucky guess, it was deliberate, targeted design.
You see, most people start by thinking, what's a fun activity we could do? But that's backwards. The absolute best designers start at the end. They ask a totally different question. When this is all over, what do I want people to know? What do I want them to be able to do? And how do I want them to feel? It all starts right there.
And that brings us to this little acronym, KSA, Knowledge, Skills, and Attitude. Think about our listening exercise. Are we just trying to teach the knowledge of what active listening is? Nope. We're trying to build the actual skill of doing it. And even more, we want to shift their attitude so they understand how powerful it feels to be heard. Getting clear on which of these you're targeting, that is an absolute game changer.
Okay, so you've nailed down your KSA goal. You know what you're aiming for. Now what? How do you actually pick the right activity? Well, you don't have to just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. There's a brilliant model that helps you choose the perfect tool for the job.
And here it is, Kolb's Experiential Learning Cycle. This thing is like a roadmap for how our brains actually learn. It's not a one-shot deal. We have an experience, we think about it, we try to make sense of it, and then we use that to try something new. It's a loop, a cycle, and it's how we get better at things.
And this is where it all clicks into place. Look how KSA maps to Kolb's cycle. If you're just teaching knowledge, yeah, you can talk about concepts. But if you're trying to build a skill, you absolutely need that concrete experience and active experimentation. That's why the role play was the perfect choice for teaching listening. A lecture just wouldn't cut it.
All right, we've got our why and our what. Now let's get into the how. We've got our goal, we've got our approach, so it's time to roll up our sleeves and craft the actual experience, getting into all the practical details.
And before you get too carried away with a creative idea, you gotta do a reality check. Give it a cool name, sure, but also think about the real stuff. Who's in the room? How many people? How much time do you actually have? Do you need any props? Thinking about this stuff up front saves you from designing this amazing activity that completely falls apart on the day.
Okay, listen up because this might be the most important part of the whole thing. Your instructions. They have to be crystal clear. Seriously, if people are confused about what they're supposed to be doing, they're not learning. Complexity is the enemy here. Simple, step-by-step instructions are your best friend.
Sooner or later, this is going to happen. You're running your listening role play and you ask someone to pretend not to listen. And then you get that one person, the smart aleck, who says, "Oh, I was multitasking. I heard everything." You know the type. So what do? How do you handle that without derailing the whole session?
Here's the trick. You don't get into an argument about whether they can multitask. That's a losing battle. Instead, you do a little conversational judo. You say something like, "That's amazing you can do that, but let's check in with your partner. How did it feel for you? Did you feel heard?" You see? You pivot the conversation from their skill to the impact on the other person. That's where the real learning is. Okay, so you've run the activity. It was amazing. Everyone was engaged. But you're not done yet. Not even close. The activity itself is like the raw ingredient. The real cooking, the part that makes it digestible and nourishing, that happens in the debrief afterwards. And this is the absolute heart of the matter. An experience without reflection is just entertainment. It might be fun, but it's not learning. Our job as designers isn't just to create the experience, it's to guide the reflection that turns that experience into a lasting lesson. And you don't have to wing it. The Gibbs reflective cycle gives you a fantastic roadmap for this conversation. You go way beyond, "So what'd you think?" You ask specific questions. What actually happened? How did you feel? What was good or bad about it? What does it all mean? And the killer question, so what are you going to do differently now? That's how you cement the learning.
All right, let's pull all these pieces together. We can boil this whole thing down into a simple, powerful blueprint that you can use over and over again.
So there you have it. 4 steps. 1. Define your outcomes with KSA. 2. Choose your approach with Kolb. 3. Craft the details, especially those clear instructions. And 4. Facilitate reflection with Gibbs. When you do this, you stop being someone who just throws information at people. You become someone who intentionally designs for learning. And really, that's the big idea here. You're not just a trainer or a teacher anymore, you're an architect of experience. You're crafting moments that don't just inform, but actually transform. That's how you create learning that sticks.
So I'll leave you with this question. What's the next experience you're going to design? What's that important skill you need to teach? And how are you going to build an experience around it that people will never forget? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.